War cabinet ministers have resigned. The most important one is Benny Gantz, former chief of staff for the Israeli military, former defense minister, and one of the three voting members of the war cabinet. This has huge implications. Now, it could be great news, but unfortunately, it could also be bad news for reasons that I'm going to explain. But that's not all. On top of that, Brigadier General Avi Rosenfeld, the commander of Israel military's Gaza division, has also resigned. Now, that's a lot of resignations shaking up the Israeli government at a moment that it definitely needs shaking up. Is it going to make a difference? And why did they resign? So, number one, on Rosenfeld, he that one, it doesn't appear to be political as far as I can see. I don't know, micro level details of Israeli military and political operations, but he's saying that he, quote, failed in his life's mission to defend Israeli communities bordering Gaza. So that sounds like that's a pretty honorable thing to do for a military guy who doesn't have to say that. Like, has Netanyahu ever said that he failed to protect Israelis? No, of course not. And he doesn't acknowledge it. He says, "Oh, we'll talk about it after the war is over," but it doesn't look like he's ever planning to end the war. So that's his way of avoiding responsibility. Whereas General Rosenfeld here is accepting responsibility and stepping down. As far as I can tell, it doesn't look like a political move. And whenever anyone takes responsibility, look, obviously, I'm not going to. I got no love for anyone in the IDF. It's not, especially, look, the lower level soldiers are, I've seen some of the videos, awful, etc. But a lot of them are drafted. You don't know who agrees with the war, who doesn't agree with the war. Leadership is what matters. So he's leadership in the IDF. So I'm never going to defend him as a human being, but this particular move seems to be honorable. So that, for what it's worth. Now, the much more important stuff is Benny Gantz, and then the second minister is also from his same party, Gadi Eisenkot. He was also part of the war cabinet, but he did not have a vote. There's voting members and non-voting members, and there was only three voting members: Benjamin Netanyahu, Benny Gantz, who just resigned, and Yoav Gallant, who is defense minister. So Gallant is enormously important here in this equation. We're going to come back to him as well. So now, when Gantz resigns, is he likely to run against Netanyahu later? Yes. Is he the more moderate person? Yes. Is he a moderate in the scope of the world? Not at all. Everyone in the war cabinet is, in my opinion, massively right wing and just killed 37,000 people without blinking an eye. So I have absolutely no love for Benny Gantz. So that he's going to have to live with that shame for the rest of his life. Later, they'll make it seem like he resigned early on. He didn't. And we know, of course, when Hamas attacked was October 7th. Here we are in the middle of June. So for 6, 7, 8, 9 brutal months, depending on how you count, depending on when you think, you could argue that this conflict's been going on for 57 or 75 years. But anyway, you get it. For all of these months, Benny Gantz participated in the massacres and the slaughters. So he's no one's dove. He was, again, the chief of the military for Israel, and he was also the defense minister. So having said that, among these horrible set of politicians, including Ben-Gvir and Smotrich, who are on the cabinet generally, but not in the war cabinet, but are far right and have pushed for, well, literal ethnic cleansing. They have not been subtle about it. They've said, let's push the Palestinians out of the Gaza Strip and take the Gaza Strip. So, and Ben-Gvir is convicted of supporting terrorism. So there's like literal terrorists in the Israeli cabinet, even before what they've done to Gaza. But the two giant factors in Benny Gantz's departure are, number one, is it going to take down the government? And then number two, is it going to take the remaining government and make it more moderate or more right-wing and vicious? So I'm going to answer those first. Chetley, thank you for the super chat. I appreciate you guys. And he mentioned this is off hours. We do the live show Monday through Friday, 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern, right here on this channel on the Young Turks. So everybody check out the live show. You don't get everything in the clips. The live show is super fun. Make sure you're checking it out. 6 o'clock every day, 6 o'clock Eastern. But on top of that, obviously, we're funded by the members. So hit the join button below if you can. If you want to contribute or become a member through tyt.com/team, that's amazing. We appreciate it. But for now, you can keep it simple and just hit the join button. And it allows us to do honest news coverage just like this, tell you the reality of it. Right now, if you turn on mainstream media, they make Benny Gantz look like an angel. He's not anywhere near an angel. Okay, but he is relevant. So let's go back to why he's relevant. So if he had left the government, and since it's a parliamentary system, he had taken away enough members of the majority, the government would dissolve and they would have to have elections right now. That would be awesome because Netanyahu is unpopular and he would lose the elections. Unfortunately, Benny Gantz's party does not have enough members in the Knesset for them to be able to take down the government. So Netanyahu and his far right-wing allies, he's got 3 far right-wing governments, parties, I should say, and 2 ultra-Orthodox parties that are still part of his government, and they have 64 out of the 120 seats. So they will be able to stay in power even with Benny Gantz leaving. Is that the end of the story? Not exactly. But hold first, Desiree. Thank you for being a member. We appreciate it. You guys are the best. Again, you don't get honest coverage like this if we don't have enough members to support the show. And this is super tough times for digital media. So we appreciate all of our members. Okay. So Gantz, within this parade of horribles, was the more moderate voice. Now, since he didn't take down the government can stay if they choose to, if no one else leaves the government till October of 2026. So Netanyahu can stay around to haunt us for all this time. And now that the so-called most moderate member of the cabinet has left, or the 2 most moderate have left, now it gives an incentive for Netanyahu to stay longer and to stay all the way to October 2026, because if the elections were held today, Netanyahu would lose, and his primary opponent would be Benny Gantz. And Benny Gantz is popular right now in Israel, partly because he's not a dove. He says is a hawk, but he wants to actually get to a resolution. So let me tell you why he left. The 3 things that he states are, number 1, Netanyahu will not do the deal for releasing of all the other hostages. They just captured and saved 4 hostages. That's great that they saved the 4 hostages. I'm thrilled to hear that. But as they were doing it, they killed 200 people. That's what the Gaza Health Ministry is reporting. The Israeli Defense Forces are saying at least 100. So given the track record of both of those organizations, more likely to be closer to 200. It's still early on, so that we don't have a final number. Would I have killed 200 people to save 4? As much as I want to save those 4 with all my heart, no, I'm not going to kill 200 people to save 4. You would only do that if you think the other 200 lives are worthless, irrelevant. And that's what the Israeli cabinet thinks of Palestinians. They don't think they're human beings. So they think we killed 200 flies to rescue 4 human beings. Who cares about killing those non-humans? And some of them have said things like that, the Ben Gavirs, et cetera, of the world. So, okay, but that's a different topic. Thrilled that at least 4 hostages are home. Disgusted as usual that they killed hundreds to get there. Jason, Kyle, Massanak, thank you for joining, and we appreciate you. So, guys, you know, I've said this 100 times. You got somebody did something terrible to people I know. There's and they even have 4 of them. They're in a room, and we can go get them. But I have to murder 200 people to get there. Look, but the ones who are Hamas that are protecting them, that's part of the combat. No problem. If they got a giant gang that's protecting the 4 in there, and we have to kill some of them to get the hostages, no problem. But if I have to kill 150, whatever the number is, civilians, I'm not going to do that, because that's saying the people I care about are more important. Their lives are more important than 200 other lives. That's not fair. Okay, but anyways, Benny Gantz says, yeah, we got the 4, but there's still 116 left. They're both alive, and unfortunately some have passed away, but we've got to get them all back. So that's his first point. And by the way, Patricia, thank you for joining. Lady Fukanti, thank you for gifting 5 Young Turks memberships. You guys are amazing. We do this show together. So his second point is, okay, we've got to have some sort of plan for what we do after the war. And Netanyahu has never presented a plan, has not only publicly, but remember, Benny Gantz is most inner core of the government until today. He was in the voting member of the Israeli war cabinet. There's only 3 people like that in the whole country now, too, right? And so it's obvious Netanyahu has never presented a plan to anyone after the war. One of the reasons might be because he doesn't plan on ever ending the war. So he's Gantz says, well, you got to have some plan. We got to get the hostages back. You have to have a plan for what the hell we're going to do with Gaza. It's insane. This late in to not have any plan at all for what you're going to do with Gaza. And of course, Netanyahu does have a plan. It's just a nefarious plan. That's why he doesn't even state it to the giant hawks who've helped him kill 37,000 people in Gaza. He won't even state it to them. That's how nefarious it is. And then the third thing is Benny Gantz says, we got to get this peace for the Israeli people at some point in our lives. We got to make a deal where we talk to the Saudis, the Palestinians, the Americans, the Europeans, etc., and come up with the best possible plan for Israel and the occupied territories. And Netanyahu obviously hates that. He's promised that there will never be a Palestinian state. So if there was an election today and I got to decide between Gantz and Netanyahu, that's a no-brainer. I'm definitely for Gantz is not an angel, not a good guy, but he's infinitely better than Netanyahu. The question is whether we're ever going to get to make that choices. And of course, we're not relevant. The Israeli citizens are relevant, whether they're going to get to make that choice. I'm going to tell you a dirty move that Netanyahu already did to Gantz. It's amazing. It gives you a sense of who Netanyahu is. First, the anti-corporatists, thank you for joining. And yes, they could get all the captors back without killing anyone if they just signed the peace deal. Biden claims it was their peace deal in the first place. I don't know if that's true or untrue, but they won't sign it. Hamas said they really like the peace deal. Publicly, though, they won't say yes until Israel says yes. So who's blocking it? It appears, by all accounts, to be Netanyahu, who's blocking his so-called government's own peace plan, if you believe Biden. But one thing's for sure. It's definitely blocked. Okay. So Travis Jennings, thank you for joining. We appreciate you so much. The Blue Lounge, thank you for donating through Super Chat. We appreciate all you guys. All right, finally, on the old days, there in a previous election, not that long ago, Netanyahu and Gantz had to make a joint government. Otherwise, they wouldn't have enough seats in the Knesset. You have to have a majority. And when they did a power sharing deal where they would both get to be prime minister just at different times. Netanyahu would go first, and then Benny Gantz would go second. So Netanyahu went first, and then he tanked the budget so that they couldn't possibly get a new government without a new budget. So they had to dissolve the government, and Benny Gantz never got his turn. Netanyahu is a snake of all snakes. He's one of the worst human beings on the planet. Benny Gantz has been screwed over by him already. The Israelis have been screwed over by him. The hostages have, and let alone the poor Palestinians and all of the horrible war crimes he's committed against them. So Israel desperately needs new elections. But now with Benny Gantz out of the war cabinet, there's only ghouls and goblins and Yoav Gallant. And again, I've got him in a similar category as Benny Gantz, not as bad as the other guys, not remotely a good guy. He's the only potential slightly moderating voice in an otherwise horrific, extreme right-wing government. So God help us. I'll get to my conclusion in a second. Ken Johnson, thank you so much for the super chat. Peter Rodriguez, thank you so much for the super chat. You guys keep us going. It's not an exaggeration. 1%. Almost all of digital media has collapsed and gone under. We're hanging on because we have enough of you guys to support us. We don't have the giant corporations backing us at all. All we have is you guys, but combined, you're stronger than all of them. That's why all the other companies have gone under and we haven't. So please get us through this year. We appreciate it. Anybody who can join or donate, we appreciate it. Last thing, guys, at the end of all of this, having read all the details of this resignation, Benny Gantz's right to resign, his reasons for resigning are correct. But since he can't dissolve the government by resigning, I'm now super worried that Netanyahu is going to continue this war until the next election that's scheduled, which is October of 2026. I don't know what other moderating influence is left in that cabinet. So if he takes the peace deal Ben Gvir and Smotrich say they're going to leave the government, which would dissolve the government. If it dissolves the government, then you have an election between Benny Gantz and Netanyahu, and Gantz probably wins, Netanyahu loses, and this will probably be the last time. I mean, I know he's like Rasputin and he's impossible to get rid of, but this probably would be the last time if he loses to Benny Gantz. But since he knows that, now he might think, well, in order to preserve myself, I have to cater to these lunatic Ben. I mean, he agrees with them anyway, so it's not like, wow, I have to cater so much to Ben Gvir and Smotrich. He largely agrees with them, but he would go in that extreme direction, and they don't want a peace deal. So if he has to appease them, then so that they don't leave the government, then now Netanyahu has all the incentive not to make a peace deal, not to get the hostages back. The only thing left is for the Israeli people to rebel so much because Netanyahu doesn't care about the hostages at all, right? That they go, okay, I mean, you're going to drag this on for years. We get it. You want to stay in power. You're a maniac, lunatic who loves power so much. You're willing to kill and destroy anything in your path to retain that power. So, and the Israeli people, they were very mad at him about October 7th. They're mad at him about a number of things, but they are not really that mad at him for what he's done in Gaza. The polling indicates it's really depressing that almost no, I mean, the Palestinian Israelis, of course, think that he went too far in Gaza, but outside of them, there's a very low number of Israelis who think they went too far in Gaza so far. So that is a depressing fact overall and a big problem in terms of how it affects Netanyahu's political calculation. So I don't want to leave you with a depressing conclusion, but I have to be honest with you guys and tell you what the situation is. So the next couple of days are really important. I'll tell you why in a second. But first, Nick H., thank you for joining membership. Nicholas Correa, thank you so much for the super chat and for the shout out to me being Mr. Jamaica. Long story, become a member. I've told it before, I'll tell it again. Ed Ladawi said, first generation American Palestinian, son of a refugee. Thanks you for all your support, bravery, and conviction, telling the world the truth. Keep up the great work. Ed, I appreciate you, brother. And, you know, look, your super chats and your memberships allow us to have this strong, brave voice. There is no strong, brave voice without you guys. It just doesn't exist. You see the rest of cable news. You see the rest of mainstream media in America. There is no brave voice because they don't allow it. But we don't need their permission. We only need your permission. So we appreciate you. Wayne Barsaman, thank you for joining. We appreciate it so much. And I missed one person here, and I want to give a shout out. Okay, here we go. Fabian Barajas, thank you so much for the super chat. I try to shout out everyone when I'm live. All right, guys, last thing is the next couple of days are important because if Benny Gantz creates some sort of momentum and Gallant also drops out of the cabinet, then maybe and then anyone. We need 5 more members of the not of the cabinet, but of the parliament, Knesset in this case, to drop out. And if 5 of them drop out, then they don't have a majority. They have to go to elections right away. But if Gantz's resignation doesn't create that kind of momentum, and then we get into a long, hard slog and they don't take that peace deal, then we're in a world of hurt. Then I have no idea how long this war is going to take. It'll drag down Joe Biden with it. He won't win win his reelection. There'll be no chance because young people will be furious that there's no peace deal. All we're doing is paying billions and billions of dollars to Israel to slaughter as many Palestinians as possible. No relief in sight. So if the government doesn't go under in the next couple of days or next couple of weeks max, we're screwed. And the Palestinians are going to be in for one of the most brutal existence for months and months and months. It is absolutely heartbreaking. So Gantz has done what he can, and now the rest is up to the rest of the Israeli parliament, cabinet, and electorate. Please, please, for the sake of Palestinians, for the sake of the world, but also for the sake of Israel, do the right thing. And if you think it doesn't matter, or if you think the world hated you already, you're wrong. The world didn't hate you. Tourism was sky high before this. Now there's almost no tourism left. Who wants to go to Israel? Not only when there's a war, but after what they've done to Gaza. The world didn't hate you back then. Right now, you've created this massive amount of hatred in the world. Why would you do that? How does that keep you safer? It doesn't. It makes you less safe. It's so obvious if you're from outside that perspective. Please don't get blinded by the rage that you're in and this culture of hatred that Netanyahu and the others have created. Israel's got to snap out of it, not only for the sake of others, but for their own sake. Gantz is right. You have to get to some pathway to safety for Israel, let alone the Palestinians. And right now, we're not on that pathway at all. We're in a pathway for endless conflict and endless war, not just for the Palestinians, but also for the Israelis. Khalid Khan, thank you for joining. Appreciate you. Marcia Fiorilla, we appreciate you for joining. You guys are amazing. And Balash, thank you so much for the super chat. Guys, nothing but love. We'll see you Monday at 6 o'clock Eastern as we do every day. Have a great weekend.